is honestly, my story is not unique. And that for me is the beauty of it, right? I think about like all of my friends who have had children, like this went wrong or that went wrong or this went wrong or that went wrong. And I had so little in my experience go wrong. And, you know, I mean, I guess it all depends on your perception. So Sid and I met later in life. We met in our 30s. He was 34 when we met, turned 35 that first year that we were dating. I had gone to looking for someone in my life to be a parent with me without the expectation of falling in love, because I'd been in love so many times and I'd had my heart broken, and I was just like, okay, clearly love is the falling in love part and being in love part. Maybe that's not my jam, but I do want to create a family with somebody. And so that's what so I went into dating in that space with that mindset of like, you know, just putting it out there that like, and this is one of the reasons why we did eHarmony, was because, well, I did eHarmony. He did eHarmony for other reasons, but I did eHarmony. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Great.
But I also knew like it was already set up specifically for people who were looking to partner for life, specific, you know, and that was what I was looking for. And I knew that, you know, that I wanted to have a baby, and that was really and I didn't necessarily want to do it alone, because I could have probably done it alone. I wanted to be partnered. So we were together basically 3 years before we got married, and then we got married, and then we waited a full year. Is that right? Yeah, that's right, because I'm 2 years older than him. And so, yeah, and we waited a full year after being married before we even thought about having kids. And that was his timeline.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask you why you waited.
And it was, and, you know, he'd never been married before. And, you know, it wasn't something that he wanted to go into lately. And based on my family's history, we were pretty sure it wasn't going to be too much of an issue for me getting pregnant. You know, like one of the values of knowing biological family is that you can kind of gauge what your fertility and what your pregnancy and delivery life is going to be like.
But did your mom have a lot of kids, or your aunts?
My mom had 2 kids, and both my sister and I were born very quickly. My sister at that point had 3 kids and had one, you know, in her late 30s, no problem. I didn't worry too much about whether or not I was going to be able to get pregnant. And so, I mean, I was anxious and I was impatient, because that's how I live. But
well, I know one of the things I was going to ask you, like, were you anxious? Because
yeah, I was anxious in the excited way, not, you know. And there was some stress. I mean, there was some stress about like, hey, you know, dude, I got a clock here. Yeah, and it's ticking. But it was also like, for me, because I had a friend while we were dating. She's like, just take your patch off, man. Like, just get pregnant. I'm like, no, that's a betrayal. I'm not doing that.
Oh, yeah. Like, oh.
Yeah, yes, that would have been
into that too. That's a whole other episode. Yeah. Gotta be forthright. That's just, I couldn't do it, you know. And like, she's like, oh, so that's why we waited, and you know, that's why it was, you know, at one point I had a conversation with my mom at some point during the process where she just was like, I just assumed you were going to never have kids. And I'm like, yeah, so did I for a while. Did your mom just not talk to you or pressure you or stop?
No, not at all. My mom was very forward in that way. My mom was very forward, very progressive thinking woman, you know.
That's great.
Kids are entirely up to the person having them, in her view. I got pregnant at 40.
Oh, it was 40. Okay.
Yeah, but had a baby at 41. Right?
Oh, that's where I always hear. That's what we always talk about. Yeah, 41. Okay.
So, so I turned 40, and I went off I think I was on the pill at that point. I was on the pill or the patch. I can't remember which. And I went off, talked to the doctor, and went off in December of, what year was she born? She was born in 2010. And so I guess it was like 6 months after we got married, because we got married in April, depending on how you count it. We got married in February or April, depending on how you count it. Legally married in February and had the big party in April. And for those of you who didn't know that, surprise.
And, the party?
The fact that we were married when we got married. Like we were married when we had our wedding. There was only for a long time there was only a handful of people who knew.
Oh, the things that come out on this podcast.
And now we just talk about it. So I'm sure there were some people at our wedding that didn't know that was the case. And and I mean, I got to tell you, it took the pressure off the day for sure. But anyway, so I guess it was December 2000. That makes sense. December like 2008 when we started trying, and I got pregnant. I want to say in like February. And I pee on a stick, and I get this super light line.
Are you serious? The light line.
Super excited, awesome, pregnant, so fast. Didn't expect it to come. Only 2 months in, I'm like, yes, I'm a rock star, right? Like,
I'll pat you like
I go to the doctor. I go to my doctor. She does the thing. She takes the blood. And a couple of days after the doctor's appointment, after I'd gotten the blood taken, the doctor's appointment, she calls me. I'm at work. And she calls me. And she's like, do you have a minute? I'm like, oh, God. And she's like, you don't have enough progesterone. This pregnancy is not viable. You are going to miscarry. You're probably going to miscarry in the next week. What do you want to do? And I said, well, I guess we just see what happens. And if I don't actually, and she's like, if nothing happens, you're going to have to come in and have a D&C because this pregnancy is not viable.
Can you share what a D&C is?
I don't know what it stands for. Oh, that's crazy. I should know what it stands for. But it's basically where they go in and they remove the uterine lining where the non-viable. It's essentially what they do in an abortion, right? But they do it in situations like this where the progesterone isn't high enough and there's no, like, you're so early on that the embryo probably isn't even dividing at that point, right? Like it's just you're pregnant, but you're not pregnant.
Yeah.
Right. There's no baby.
Yeah.
And there's no growth and there's no heartbeat and there's no nothing. Right. It's just, there's just this stuff and cells and things. And so I did in fact have a complete miscarriage over that weekend, which I'm not going to go into the details of it. It's a lot. It's like having an extraordinarily heavy period with a lot of material.
Is there anything that you want to share for anyone listening and just our viewers of like what's, I don't know. I don't even have a question of what you want to share. Like what do you want people to be left with that may be going through that or
I guess for me to understand, like, because I'm a person who, like, as soon as something starts happening, I need to know more information, right? Like, and so I got on the web and I started really looking and I started really understanding what was happening inside of my own body. And I could have called the doctor and she would have explained to me because I had a wonderful OB. Yeah. She's amazing. Yeah.
That's good.
But it was really, I needed to do it for myself and I needed to really understand. And I'm not generally a like doomsday scroller. Like I wasn't looking for like, oh, you have cancer and you're going to die, or you did this wrong and you're going to die. It was more like, what is actually happening inside of my body right now? And I learned about it and I learned what was going on and I learned what was going to be happening. And, I knew it was going to maybe be painful. And it was the best description I've heard of it to date is that it's like, at that early stage, because I was less than 8 weeks.
Yeah.
I was less than 8 weeks pregnant. And historically, up until modern, really, really recently, like the past 30, 40 years, and since we've had the P-stick test, like they didn't even consider you pregnant until you'd missed a couple periods. Right. And so it was literally like having entire weeks worth of period or 5 to 7 days worth of period blood come out at once with lots of material.
You had to have extra padding or hospital padding.
Oh yeah. Or And there were times where it was just like, I'm just going to sit here and let this come out. Lots of showers.
Yeah. Lots of showers.
Just dealing
sitting
with,
on the toilets and
and and like no tampons because you can't do that during that time. And it it was awful and it was horrible. And I felt responsible and had all of that emotional mourning. And I got to tell you, Sid was the best partner during that whole process. We went and saw 2 movies that weekend, like in the movie theater. Cause that, you know, at that point I was still like making movies and all that stuff. And it was like my church, you know, it was like a place that I went for healing. And we saw Time Traveler's Wife, which is one of my favorite books.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And
that's a good one.
I think we saw Time Traveler's Wife. I know we saw.
It's definitely an escape movie.
The first Chris Pine Star Trek. I absolutely know we saw that
so
one.
entertaining.
The first J.J. Abrams Star Trek.
Yeah.
I absolutely know we saw that one. And the funny piece, I'm pretty sure, maybe it wasn't Time Traveler's Wife, but it was, I'd have to ask Sid, he'll remember.
Yeah.
But I do remember one of them, and there's a funny story about that coming later. Okay. Why the Star Trek is important. Not only am I like a humongous Star Trek fan, but like it is also like relevant to something that happens later.
Ooh, and, exciting to hear.
And so then it was like sad, and we mourned, and then I went on a cleaning binge because I thought maybe I had a miscarriage because my house was not clean enough. I don't know. It was like a moment of OCD.
Well, of like of control, maybe like
right.
A sense of control. What could there was something that was out of your control? Was that type of is that common around that time? Did your doctor tell you? Yeah, it sounded like
that's the thing.
Common.
They think it may be as much as 50% of all pregnancies.
Oh, yeah.
Because so many people don't report it, or they think like between that 4 and 8 week period, like 8 weeks, you probably know, right? Like if 6, 7, 8 weeks, it's definitely different. But up to 4 weeks, it could just feel like a normal period, and you would never know.
Yeah, you know what I just thought of, and I know this already, which most I think people do, is why we don't tell or share until after the first trimester, is because we want to make sure, ensure that it's viable, that it's healthy, and to bring out those news.
Because anything can happen, and you know, there's been situations like you can read all of the different things that happen, right? Like an ovum without a nucleus can get fertilized, and it creates a form of cancer, right? And there's all of these different ways. There's all these different things that happen. Sperm that has 2 heads, unviable embryo, unviable zygote. Like there's so many things that happen that you don't even think, like you just,
Flo, you and I can just have a whole conversation about the science of this, and the science, and then add on the politics of it, right? Like, leave it alone. But I'm saying a whole episode, like the science and the ones making these decisions, they're not even connected to the science. And the science is just amazing.
Right. And so then we had to wait another couple of months. The doctor asked us, she said, just wait a couple of months for your body to sort of return to its normal cycle.
How old were you when this first?
40.
When you,
Right. So I turned 40 in 2008, in November of 2008.
And then the doctor said, wait a couple months.
She's like, wait a couple of months before you even start trying again. Wait 2 full periods, have 2 full normal periods before you even start trying again. So that put us in like June. We started trying again in June. And I had an appointment with her to follow up on fertility stuff. We had made an appointment for September. And she's like, I'm just going to give you a referral to the fertility doctor because you haven't gotten pregnant again yet. And you're older. They only make you wait 6 months when you're your age. And so we made the appointment. The appointment was for, I'd have to look at a calendar, but it was mid-October, like October 9th or 10th. And it was a Tuesday. And the reason it was a Tuesday is important. So I'd made this appointment with the fertility doctor for the Tuesday in October of 2009. And during this time, I was in a job that I wasn't super happy with. And I really I wasn't doing entertainment work. It was great people and whatever, but it was like, I don't really want to be here. And so I started putting feelers out that I was looking for a new job. And I didn't really care what it was. Like, I was like, okay, whatever. And so a friend of mine called me and said, I have a friend who's looking for, an assistant for a guy who's general manager of a studio. I'm like, oh, that sounds good. Like facilities, like, you know.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's cool. Sure. And so I applied for the job and I got the job. And during the negotiation for my salary and stuff, I wanted to make sure that they would cover my COBRA in case I got pregnant. Because at that point it was before Obamacare was passed. So there would have been a lapse and I would have come in and if I had been pregnant, it would have been a pre-existing condition and it would have been, it just would have been very expensive to have a baby.
Yeah.
And so I got all of that, negotiated all of that was great. And then I get up in the morning on the day that I'm supposed to start my job, and on a lark, I'm like, I'm just going to do a pregnancy test.
No way.
The day before the first fertility appointment and the first day of the new job.
So that's why that Tuesday is important.
That's why the Tuesday was important, because it was Monday morning. I'm getting ready to start my new job. I'm like, oh man, I'm that girl, right? I'm that person. I show up at a job pregnant, right? And so I didn't tell anybody. I mean, Sid knew, and because of what had happened the previous time, and I just didn't want to go through all of the mishigas of telling people this, that, or the other thing. So yeah, it's October, and yep, I'm pregnant, and I go and we start the whole process, right? And it's November, and we're still not telling anybody. We've decided to really keep it low key, and we find out one of my closest friends is dying. And I was like, we have to tell Don. He's like, yeah, you can tell Don. I mean, Don had been through this whole journey with me.
Your friend who was
my friend who passed away, who actually, on a side note, his sister is the one who found out she had breast cancer. Who's going to be on a future podcast. We found out she had breast cancer while she was breastfeeding. And his sister has become one of my closest friends. And so anyway.
To just look back on, then you're not telling anyone. So then the first time you were pregnant, did you do the whole sharing? And then people had to mourn with you with the miscarriage?
We told, we were we told everybody. And it was just silly. And so, it was not okay. And it's not it was not okay for us. And we, hindsight 2020, we shouldn't have done it.
But you didn't know what you didn't know.
I didn't know what we didn't know.
Yeah.
And again, I was like, woohoo, look at me. Big, strong uterus, right? And so, it's October, November. Our friend dies the Friday after Thanksgiving. And so I'm not even thinking about being pregnant at this point, right? New dog. Thanksgiving was always at our house at that point. So it's 25 people in and out of my house over Thanksgiving weekend. Don's dying. His family's in town. It was just, there were so many things that were happening. I didn't even clock that I was pregnant really until December. And that's when we started telling everybody, was in December. Okay. And once I heard the heartbeat, once we knew that my levels were good and that this was going to go. Right. And then I told my boss, and he was so gracious. It was so lovely. I will forever be grateful to him, because he knew how old I was. And the first thing he said to me is, have you been trying for a long time? And I said, kind of, not really, but yeah. So he's like, okay.
Did he have kids?
Oh yeah.
So was he in that world? Yeah. I mean, yeah.
So he was, he's very, very, and his wife was amazing. It was so wonderful. Yeah. It was such a wonderful experience, and going through the pregnancy, and, it was other than just being super emotional, which I was, I want to say probably 22 weeks. I had the worst case of rhinitis of pregnancy, and I'd never heard of it. I didn't know it was a thing.
Yeah.
Right. So rhinitis is when the insides of your sinuses swell. Yeah. It feels you're stuffed up all the time, and it's postnasal drip. I was coughing all the time. It was awful. No. It was awful. I had very little morning sickness. I had a little bit, and the rhinitis made it worse. Whatever morning sickness I did have. And I didn't have morning sickness. I had afternoon sickness. So
it's like clockwork.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Afternoon.
Yeah. Afternoon.
And this is at work.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So, and there was a lot of nausea, not a lot of throwing up, but the discomfort of pregnancy for me was simply that my life wasn't where I wanted it to be.
How so?
When I got pregnant. And, you know, I wasn't making as much money as I wanted to be, and like whatever. And
can we rewind to this part of the elephant in the room? If there's an elephant in the doctor's room, the geriatric conversation.
Oh,
the geriatric pregnancy. I tried to Google some other. I went to the thesaurus to see if there's any other empowering words.
Well, it shouldn't
be.
I mean,
just what was your doctor like? What there's concerns?
Oh, she didn't care.
Right away. Like, okay, so she's like, no, you're strong, you're healthy, or
And the thing about my fabulous OB is that she's
and I'm sorry, I'm connecting this because of like where you are. That's my lead in to like where you are in life as an older, you know, woman, career, all that in place in your life to up to. So,
and a lot of that got put on pause because this became more important. You know, I wasn't during that time. I mean, I was in the industry, but I was ancillary to the entertainment industry. You know, I was in a facility that rented space, and I was working for the president of a real estate company. I mean, he was the GM of the studio, but he was a president of a real estate company.
Yeah,
and
going back to your doctor,
but my doctor, she's from Romania. And so she comes at things with a very different perspective. And so for her, and she's one of the biggest OBs in the South Bay and South Bay of Los Angeles. And she was just great. She's a wonderful human. And at that point, she was part of a practice of all women OBs. And so I had to meet all of them in the practice during the pregnancy, and they were all, I mean, it said geriatric pregnancy on my thing. And so there were some things that we had to do. Yeah. At like 20 weeks or whatever, I had to do that horrible diabetes test, the sugar test.
Yep.
And it came back that I had gestational diabetes.
Okay.
And then I get all this literature that scares the poop out of you.
Wow.
Like, your baby's going to be giant and you can't eat any of this and you can't do this. And so then I had to go meet with the specialist. I met with the specialist and she's like, here's what you need to do. You need to get this. I got a prescription for the finger thing where they where you test your blood. And she's like, and we want you to keep track of what, and take a food diary. And I mean, you know me well enough to know what happened then.
Yeah. I mean, how long were you pregnant until all that?
It's like 20 weeks.
Okay, so same thing. It's still early.
It was it was right. Yeah. It was. I found out I had gestational diabetes around the same time that I found out Audrey's. That's my daughter's name.
Yeah.
That I found out that she was a girl, and it all happened like within a couple weeks of each other. And that whole finding out she was a girl is a whole nother thing. I think I've told you that story. It's pretty funny. I'll go into that.
No, but I'm putting a note on that.
Oh yeah, no, we're going to talk about that because it's it was part of the journey, and so, anyway, I'm in a job and, you know, my friend dies and it's horrible and all of these things. And we're trucking along. And really in December is like when I really started to feel pregnant. I'm doing okay. I mean, I'm emotional. Our financial life isn't where I wanted it to be. Our marriage had a tough season during that time, but we were both really excited about being parents. And so we also entered the journey with like, we're going to do this and we're going to do this together. We had over the course of the pregnancy, the conversation about like neither one of us wanted our kid in daycare all the time. We had that conversation too. Sid's a gig worker. He was an actor at that point and did some stage management at the Geffen. His income wasn't steady and I was and so we decided that he'd stay home. And then he went on full force into like, what does it mean to be a stay-at-home dad? Read all the books, did all the research. We did a bunch of research on pregnancy because I had a very specific idea of how I wanted to have a baby. You know how you do.
Yes.
And so, you know, we did all of that. My yoga teacher became my doula. She was a doula in training. And so, you know,
how did you know to have a doula? Like, how did you start learning? Like, is that in your world?
Honestly, I think it was
in your world already.
Yes and no. Like not before I got pregnant, but when I started pregnancy yoga, and met
wonderful.
Gail, that was when she, you know, she talked about like, and I was on Baby Center, right? And which is like Facebook for pregnant people. And so there's a lot of information that just comes at you from Baby Center. And so the doula conversation came. I'm like, what is that? And like, and you know, and I was talking to Gail about it. I said, do you know anybody? She's like, well, I'm a doula in training. I'm like, great. I love you. We're good together. We like each other. Would you, and she did, she came, she met Sid. It was beautiful. And in the meantime, I probably deleted it, but I had this spreadsheet of like everything that I ate, all of my, like my blood sugar, like 4 times a day or whatever.
So
I was supposed to, it was
good.
really funny. It was really funny.
Yeah, I couldn't.
And so I go in for a follow-up. I'm like, here.
You had it all ready. Like,
had it all ready. She's like, nobody has ever come in with this much information.
I
know. And so there was that. And then there was the meeting with the nutritionist, which I basically walked out of.
What happened?
I was a gym rat in my 20s, and I wasn't a nutritionist. I am not a nutritionist, but I had a lot of information about health and nutrition and, you know, what it looks like to when you're trying to diet or whatever for health or muscle or this or that. And so I get this infographic that has like 4 pieces of bread on it.
And that kind of nutrition, like
So I went to it's a hospital nutritionist, and I looked at the nutritionist, and I'm like, this infographic has 4 pieces of bread on it. I'm never going to eat 4 pieces of bread a day in my ever. She's like, well, that stands for. She's like, with gestational diabetes, mind you. So bread's kind of out.
Did she even look at your chart?
Yeah, no, I was there because of the gestational diabetes.
Yeah. Okay. So she
that's
gives you
why
this
I was
chart.
saying, and she was like, oh, well, that's just the graphic for grains. I said, well, that's a dumb graphic because people who don't know, and I literally said this to her. I was so mean. I said, it's a dumb graphic because anybody who doesn't know about nutrition is going to look at that and think they need to eat 4 pieces of bread a day.
Yes. And because they're coming from the hospital too, especially.
Oh, no.
Who are they going to believe?
Oh, no. And like, I came home and I showed it to Sid, and then I threw it in the garbage. And you know, and so we developed, and this is where, again, best partner for me in the world. He cooks really, really well.
Love it.
And so I would come home and I would have these incredibly well-balanced meals that were literally designed by him for me, so that I could get all the nutrients that I needed and we could deal with the diabetes.
Yeah.
Right. And just fantastic. Just a wonderful, wonderful experience. And I ate really, really well while I was pregnant, gained a little bit too much weight, which the doctor commented on. And
I had the comments too.
You had what?
I had the comments too.
Oh yeah.
Of the additional.
And so yeah. And so, and then of course, like I was already overweight when I got pregnant, probably by about 20, 25 pounds. And, because marriage had been, we ate a lot in the early days of our marriage.
Comfort food, love
and
food.
I didn't know at the time that my thyroid was starting to not work properly at that point.
Because I was still, everything.
I was still normal, right? My thyroid was still normal. And I managed to avoid getting the flu during pregnancy, which was really good. And for the most part, it was a fairly normal pregnancy. And so the day that I found out that Audrey was coming, because we had basically picked out names, because they're family names, and the ultrasound tech was like, do you want to know the sex of your baby? And I said, yeah, we decided that we did so that we could prepare and whatever. And she's like, well, you're having a girl. And I was like, okay. Unexpected. Did not think I was going to be having a girl.
Really?
Yeah.
50-50 chance, Flo.
I know. Not at all mentally
Not part of your birth plan?
Not part of my birth plan. Not at all mentally prepared for that news.
Wow.
So I left with the pictures, and I went and I sat in the car and I cried for like 20 minutes. Then I called Sid and I told him, And I said, I'm very sorry about this. And he's like, why are you sorry? He's like, I knew it was a girl. He's like, I've known it was a girl since the day you told me you were pregnant.
Oh
he's like,
my gosh.
He's like, I just didn't want to talk to you about it because I knew how much you were hanging on to the fact that you really wanted to have a boy.
Okay. So why did you cry in the car?
Because I have no idea. Well, I do now, but at that point, I didn't think I would be a good mom to a girl.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had conditioned myself because I'm pretty tough and I'm very forthright and I don't do bows and I don't wear a lot of makeup and I don't, I'm not super soft. And I had this image of myself where I'm just like, I'm a tough boy mom. That's what I am. Right. And so after that, I called, my really close friend who had been my maid of honor at my wedding at that time. And I'm like, what am I going to, after I called Sid, I'm still sitting in the parking lot. I'm like, what am I going to do? She's like, you'll be fine. She's like, it's fine. She's like, don't worry. Like, you are the best. Like, she was great. It was great. I have a wonderful support. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just to validate how you felt. It's crazy when you look back, but during that moment, I can imagine it's just to validate your emotions then. Well, because everything goes through our heads when we're not only pregnant, but like the expectations and past experiences and what we're going to do with this human being.
Right. Well, and that is part of what am I going to do with a girl? I don't know shit about princesses. Yeah. I don't know anything about bows. Like that's not where I'm going to live. And my friend reminded me, she's like, well, if you don't live there, why do you think your daughter's going to live there? And I thought, that's the most brilliant thing anybody could have said to me at that moment.
Yes.
Right? And so there was that. And so then the other piece of this was the name that we had picked out, if it had been a boy. Both of our fathers are deceased. And the child the boy would have been named after both of them. And would have had Sid's dad's initials. And it was also, looking back on it, I think that moment was also like the devastation of not having to be able to give my father and his father that honor.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that was also a piece of it. I didn't recognize it as that at the time, but that's what it was. And so
carry on the name and the legacy. And
yeah. And the name she has is a family name, and we're both very, Sid's very happy with it. She loves her name, but it's, yeah. So,
can you share with us now that you brought that up?
Oh, yeah.
You did tell me though.
My grandmother, my maternal grandmother's name was Audrey. And so there was that. And then Sid's maternal grandmother's name was Helen, and they were really close. And so we toyed with Helen Audrey, but that would have made her initials Ha instead of So
I love that. Oh my God. Yeah. And to know that she knows that. She knows that, right?
She does. So but now there's so many Audreys in her sphere. I'm like, do you want us to just start calling you Helen? She's like, no, but that's an option.
But I was Audrey for like,
yeah. So
it's so good.
Yeah. So I'm going through this and I'm working and it's crazy and everything's just elevated. We start doing research. We talk to the doula. My birth plan's probably 4 pages long. We'll see if I can find it. Yeah. So we can put it up in the show notes. I'll take out the
I do want to. Yeah. I want to. Yeah. That's totally going up. When you told me that, right. I'm like, oh, it's so going in your story.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And it's very detailed to the point that like one of the things that in talking to and learning about birth plans and sort of the medicalization of birth, because I wanted to have a home birth. And that got taken off the table immediately.
Wow.
By both my OB and my husband. And the hospital was 10 minutes from where we lived at that point. So I was like, what's the big deal? He's like, no, not doing this. Not unless, basically not unless we can have an ambulance standing by outside in case something goes wrong. Like he was.
Okay. Now, and then the OB did have a very, I'm just going to we'll go to the OB, but you and I, because I know you obviously personally, and you guys have a very special, unique relationship. Can you share, I know, but share with our listeners and viewers why Sid's opinion really mattered? Because, there's a lot of moms and women that are giving birth that were like, this is how I want it. This is my choice. And a lot of partners will honor that. But can you just say why it was distinctly different? Why you honored
Sid's request?
Because he made a logical argument and we had a discussion. I knew that during the process, I was going to need him to be as relaxed as possible. And knowing that he was going to be in a heightened state of anxiety if we were to have the baby in the house, it wouldn't have been ultimately as pleasant as it ended up being. Let me put it that way.
Well, because you know each other very well.
Yeah. We do. And we share everything and we're partners in every aspect of our life. And this is as much his baby as it is mine, you know?
Yeah. You've said,
I mean,
you shared that to me.
I ate food and built her.
I mean, it really hit home to me in my heart when you said, because I can do this for him too.
Yeah.
Like of all the things around your pregnancy, okay, I'll give you this kind of thing. Not to, not kind of thing, but yeah, it was a real thoughtful process you guys did.
And then the OB also said, she said, you're geriatric. Well, she didn't say geriatric. She said, you're an older mom. She never used the word geriatric, but it's all over the paperwork.
God bless her. Yeah.
Oh yeah. No. And she says, you're an older mom and anything can happen. And if you deliver at home, I can't be there. And that was an important piece of it too, for me, was making sure that she or someone, and then I investigated whether or not the insurance would cover a midwife. Nope. And I'm like, oh, okay. There was a lot of financial consideration, and with the insurance and making sure insurance would cover things. And if something had gone wrong, being in the hospital was the best place to be. And then we toured the hospital. And once we toured the hospital, I was totally fine.
Oh,
because the way that it's Torrance Memorial, and it's a brand new, at that point, pretty much a brand new maternal wing. The baby doesn't go to the nursery unless there's something wrong. Baby's always with you. Kangaroo care and all that stuff, skin to skin, very highly honored at Torrance. There's a labor and delivery, and then you get moved to a private room. So you're not in a room with 4 other moms or 2 other moms or whatever. It's just you and the baby in the room. So it's like, oh, okay, we're going to do it this way. And they were totally supportive of it.
And did you have any ideas that it was not going to be that way? Like, did you have any other notions or ideas? Okay.
Yeah. I had a lot of notions that it wasn't going to be that way. And that it was going to be super medicalized. And that's not something that I wanted. When you're older, I don't know if you had this. I don't know if everybody goes through this now, but we had to have a genetic test. So they took some of the amniotic fluid. I don't think we had a full amniocentesis, but they did something. And, they give you this scary, scary set of diagnostics.
It's because you were older.
Because I was older. And the instance of Down syndrome and some other chromosomal disorders are more pronounced when you're an older mom, when you're an older person who's pregnant. And so that's a piece of it. When I got it, I was relieved because, the statistics are at my age, I had like a 1 in 50 chance of her having Down syndrome. And my blood test came back that it was like 1 in 200 based on the actual genetics. And so there was nothing amiss, right? So, okay, going along, fine, going to work every day, doing my thing, like eating well and trying not to gain too much weight and trying to walk and, all of the things that you're supposed to do. We get to 36 or 37 weeks. And I'm not with my chosen OB. I'm meeting one of the other OBs in the practice. Yeah. It's at that point you're going in weekly, right? Because you're at the tail end. You could go any minute. I'm there. And so the doctor's examining me and she's like, we're going to do vaginal today. I'm like, okay, great, whatever. I don't care, blah. And she's like, oh my. I'm like, oh my God, what happened? She's like, your mucus plug just came out. I was like,
that's the movie.
I was like, okay. I said, what does that mean? She's like, oh, you can have a baby in the next week. I'm like, oh. Okay, so am I on maternity leave then? She's like, no, it's okay. And I looked her dead in the face and I said, my job is in Hollywood. I live in Redondo Beach. She's like, you're on maternity leave. And she signed it right then. She was like, no question. Like you're not going to make it, right? Like you won't make, like if you have to drive an hour and a half, it's not happening. So we're going to put you on maternity leave. So mucus plug comes out in her hand. You're on maternity leave. I call my boss and I said, I'm on maternity leave. He's like, we're not ready for you to be on maternity leave. I'm like, I know that. I know.
Wasn't ready either.
That I wasn't quite ready. He's like, I thought you had 3 weeks left. I'm like, I do technically, but I'm, whatever, 2 centimeters dilated, and it's happening any moment. She put me on maternity leave.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, just on Monday, make sure everybody knows everything, right? So Sid's got a job. He's shooting a commercial somewhere in the desert. And
oh my God.
And so he's got to travel Saturday out to the desert. And it's so this is Friday afternoon. I come home. I'm like, we're having a baby sometime in the next week, blah, whatever. We're talking. He's like, oh, I gotta go, but I'm going out to the desert tomorrow. Should I tell him I can't come? I said, absolutely not. Go do your, go. He's like, well, somebody needs to be with you. So I called my friend, and she came down. Her kid and my kid are known each other since her kid's 11 months older than mine. And, we're super close friends, and the girls are really close. And so that's really nice. But so my friend comes down, and we're walking around the block, and I'm having what I believe are contractions at this point. Right. I was wrong. And so I then called my mother and said, oh yeah, I'm having contractions. She's like, you need to get to the hospital right now. I'm like, why? And she's like, you started having contractions. That baby's going to come any second. I'm like, okay. I don't know anything. I don't know actually what's going on. And so my water hadn't broken or anything at this point. And so, Julie stays with me. Sid gets home. He's dehydrated and has a starting of a migraine. And Julie goes home. We call the doula. We get everything ready. We have everything packed and ready, and we go to the hospital. And I don't know what time. It must have been 6 or 7 o'clock at night at this point. And we're at the hospital. And I'm really thirsty. And the contractions are coming, but they're not super strong. And so the nurse is like, do you want some juice or something? I said, sure. So I drink the juice. Contractions slow down. I drank some more water. She comes in and yells at me because I didn't tell her I had gestational diabetes and she wasn't supposed to give me juice. That was fun.
She didn't look at your chart. What are these people not looking at your charts?
It's just whatever. So I'm drinking water, and the contractions stop, and they won't let me eat. I'm starving.
Yeah.
Right. And they won't let you eat, which is dumb, but whatever.
They don't. Yeah. Well,
and so the doula's there, and Sid's there. He's got a headache. The doula's like, whatever. And she's like, are you okay?
Headache.
Sid, because he'd been in the desert all day.
I know he was in the desert. He's dehydrated, but it's so.
He's dehydrated. He's got a headache. He feels like shit. He's trying to sleep on the little cot thing in labor and delivery. And I'm like, and I call them over to the bed at 1:30, 1 o'clock and 1 or 1:30 in the morning. And I'm like, I want to go home. This baby's not coming tonight. I want to go home. I want to eat. I want to sleep in my own bed. I want to pet my dogs. I want to go home. And the nurse comes, and the doula's like, so I said, can one of you please just talk to her? She was strict. She's a labor and delivery nurse. She's probably a lovely human being. But in that moment, she was not my friend.
Oh, yeah. A lot of moments.
And I'm like, when Sid's there and the doula's there, I think Sid said she wants to go home. And the nurse's like, she can't go home. It's 1 o'clock in the morning or 1:30 in the morning. I'm not calling a doctor. I think one of us asked, who's the doctor on duty for tonight? And it was my OB.
Oh.
It was my doctor. And I'm like, call her.
Yeah.
She will and I said, I looked the nurse dead in the eye. I'm like, call her. She will let me go home. And the nurse is like, she's not going to let you go home. Oh. You're going to be, She's like, I'll call her and I'll wake her up and she'll be upset and she's not going to let you go home. She called. She comes back, tail between her legs. Fine, we're discharging you. She said, Oh, yeah.
Okay.
She was not happy.
Do you think that you being direct like that and knowing your own body and self was because of your age and your experience?
I think some of it was because of my age and because I had advocates like that too. With me.
I had advocates. You've learned a lot in your time living. You know, it's like,
and I think too my relationship with my OB. You know, the fact that we talked about things like, can I have Brie? Because Brie was like my favorite thing in the whole world. She's like, absolutely not. She's like, if we're in Romania, you could have whatever you want. You're not having brie or raw milk. Like, we had a whole conversation about it because she's like, you are not getting listeria on my watch. So, like, it was like, she's amazing. She's amazing.
Very straight. Woman. Did you straight with compassion, right? Because you know where it's coming from. It's coming from love. And did you have Braxton Hicks?
I did. Well, no.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it was Braxton Hicks. I was dehydrated.
Okay, so I want. That's why I want to ask me and the listeners to realize, and the viewers, like, oh, then what was it? What did you have?
I was dehydrated.
So,
and it was causing right, and it was causing what I thought were contractions at that moment.
Yeah,
they were a form of contraction. There was definitely something going on in my body. It was probably Braxton Hicks, but accelerated by the fact that I did not have enough liquid in my system. And
can you just share what Braxton Hicks is just because this is the next episode? This is the first episode where we bring it up.
So a lot of times Braxton Hicks, they used to call it false labor. And what they've learned in the in the past 50, 60 years, 70 years, whatever it's been since obstetrics has been really medicalized, that it really is just the body preparing helping to move the baby so that the baby's in the right position, and really helping your body, because the other thing that I didn't know until I was pregnant was that there are all these hormones that are released that like make your cartilage and your ligaments loose. And so you're not as goosey, right? Your body's different. Your center of gravity is different. Like your balance is different because the baby takes so much from the body. Anyway, back to Braxton Hicks. So I had been having Braxton Hicks for like 3 weeks, and I knew what they were. The things that I was having on Saturday was like that accelerated, right? It was Braxton Hicks, but I was also dehydrated.
Okay.
So stay hydrated, people. If you're pregnant, stay hydrated. Super important.
But what about the contractions? Was she keeping track of?
She was keeping track. Well, and then they went away. But but the reason that they didn't want to release me is because I was like 3 centimeters dilated. The baby was coming.
Yeah.
Right? But it could have taken 2 days at that point. So we went home. We got discharged and we went home. And I slept on my own bed and had a big giant breakfast and petted my dog and had a really, really good night's sleep, and I don't know what I was, it says he knew we were going to the hospital when I came out of the bathroom, and I had a real contraction, and it brought me to my knees.
Oh, brought you to your knees.
Yes. I'm a tough cookie, man. I can take a lot of pain. And so anyway, so I'm gonna back up a little bit. So it's like, I don't know, it's like 11 o'clock in the morning, something like close to that. And I'm like, oh, I gotta pee. So I get up off the couch because I'm laying on the couch with the dogs, like, like whatever. And I get up to pee, and it's like the movies. It's not a little trickle. It's like whoosh, out of my body. It broke, and then some, right? And it just kept coming, which is also something they don't tell you. It doesn't stop.
Yes. Like they see the person in the movie, oh, it broke, so we're just going to go to the hospital and nothing's going on down there. No. You're like, okay, like what did you put from the time that you left your house? Okay,
I changed twice. I changed clothes twice, and then towels, and then I didn't care. And Sid has leather seats in his car, so he had covered.
Did the car care?
No, he took care of it before. He had prepared.
Oh, I love.
He had prepared, seriously, best birthing partner anybody could have. He had covered
leather seats.
Yeah, he covered the car. He covered the seat and I don't know, like garbage bag and towels or something or whatever. And I started having these contractions, and they're coming quick. I mean, like the first few were like 5 minutes apart. Like my water broke, and I started having actual contractions, which are very different than Braxton Hicks and hurt a lot more. And anybody that tells you that you don't remember it after the baby's born is a liar. So, because you do remember
the difference with the Braxton Hicks is that it's the timing of the contractions too that women need to learn.
For sure. Yeah, Braxton Hicks aren't consistent, or they're consistent for a little while and then they go away. But this was like
it's like on and on. It's like nonstop.
And this was Sunday. So I lost my mucus plug on Friday, and it's Sunday. And then so we get to the hospital. I can't walk. Like they bring a wheelchair out.
Yeah, wheelchair. Yeah.
Right. And again, me being me, the week before, I had brought cookies for the nursing staff. of the hospital to say, hey, we'll be here soon. Here's some cookies. Here's my birth plan, blah, blah, blah. And, yeah, whatever. Rolling my eyes.
They're
at
like,
myself
she's so adorable. They're like,
I don't know what they
so
thought.
cute.
They thought this woman's crazy. This poor. They didn't read my birth plan. And so it's Sunday. Sid's called the doula. He called her like 3 times. She's not picking up. She's at some doula class, and had her phone on silent. Right. Fine, whatever. I didn't need her. I mean, I love her to death. She's an amazing person, but like, I didn't need her. And so I'm, this part is like a fog of how I even got to the bed. Like, I don't even know how I got in the room or to the bed or whatever, but this is my recollection.
Sid probably remembers.
Sid remembers everything, because Sid had to park the car. Right. So he dropped me off at the entrance of the hospital. They brought out a wheelchair, and then he went to park the car. And I don't even know how long it took him to get in the room. I don't know any of that. And he's here somewhere, so he may chime in. But I told him I was just going to tell my story, and if we needed his input, I would let him know.
I would love it. But yeah.
And so, so I remember, like, I had a whole playlist that I wanted to play. Like, I was
come on, totally. Did you have like candles? Did you have
no candles? But at Yoga Ball, yes, which I never used. So we're in labor and delivery. Our delivery nurse was amazing. I don't even Sid probably remembers her name. I don't even remember.
I know, mine too.
And at one point, like, I'm just not progressing. I'm not dilating. Like, it's not happening. But I'm in a lot of pain. And at this point, I mean, just for our listeners, this is something you can ask for. She did this for me. I didn't even know this was a thing you could do. She turned me around on the bed so that I was on my knees, and she put the bed up like this. So I'm on my knees holding on to the back of the bed, facing the mattress. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
But you're on the mattress.
So the bed is like this, right? Or like this, really. Yeah. And so my knees are here. And I'm facing towards the mattress of the bed, and I'm holding on. I'm in so much
the mattress
pain.
is the L shape. The mattress is reclined. Like
the mattress is the back of the bed is up like this, and then and then the flat part of the bed is actually down a little bit. And that's it's I don't know, it's a gravity thing. Whatever it was, it helped me because I could.
So you're holding on to that mattress part.
I'm holding on to the frame of the bed.
Yeah, the rail. Yeah.
And I'm inside of my own head, right? And Sid, and I remember this, and Sid tells the story really well too. It's like I'm like, my eyes are closed, and I'm like totally like concentrating on what's happening, very like breath work and doing all my yoga stuff and like this or that thing. And Sid's right next to my face, and I say to him, I don't know if I can do this without drugs. And he leans in and he says to me, I'm gonna start crying.
Yeah.
Hey, babe, are you here? Yep. What did you say? Can you come here for a second and talk in the microphone? Sid's going to come. He's going to put on a shirt.
I can't wait because I know.
My God. And yeah. And it was something that he had learned from the Bradley Method book. And so
that was what I read.
That he read, that he skimmed. I mean, that's amazing.
This is Sid.
Hi.
Hello.
I really good to see you.
What I read was that every woman. Let me back up. The reason Lamaze is so widely accepted in the medical community is there's like one line in the whole method that says, if the mom wants drugs, give her drugs. The other method said, if you put anything into the mother's system, you're going to stop labor. The body's going to see it as a threat and shut things down. And so when Flo's on her knees, eyes clamped shut, rocking back and forth, holding on to the back of that gurney for all she's worth, she says, I don't know if I can do this without drugs. And to this day, it's still one of my proudest moments. I leaned in and I said, anything we introduce into your system is going to slow this process down. Do you want to slow this process down, or do you want to have a baby? My wife threw her head back and roared like a lioness, and we were off to the races.
Yeah. And I went from like
you want to
4 centimeters dilated to about 10 centimeters in about 20 minutes.
Oh my God.
It hurt.
Audrey heard daddy.
Oh yeah. Well, I think we both did.
You heard. You
right?
did. Yeah.
And at one point the doula had come over with a cold cloth, and since then I sent her scurrying into the corner. I was like, no, don't touch me.
The doula?
Yeah.
Usually the doula is the one that's like in like Zen and mode and ready. Well, I just got to go back to you roared like a lion. Okay, that in itself is amazing. Okay, great.
Well, and I apparently scared a couple of the other families on the ward.
Yeah, well, that's the movie part you're talking about.
that was like one of my conditions was like, I don't want drugs. I don't want to be drugged. I don't want, unless it's absolutely necessary. And that's all in my birth plan. And Sid knew that too. And so, but it was, I really was at a point where I was like, I can't do this. I'm not going to be able to do this. I'm not capable. And he said what he said. And I said, okay. And here we go. And she was born about 20 minutes after that. So the time frame, it was like 11. And then she was born at like 10 minutes after 2, 3 hours of hard labor. Nothing. My personal OB was still on call or on the ward. And she missed the whole birth. Sid and the delivery nurse were there when Audrey was born. That
So
came too
your
fast. Yeah. Because nobody expected me to go from like 4 centimeters to like having a baby in 20 minutes.
But it wasn't like, okay. I mean, I know it's well and good, but your doctor wasn't like at home. She was around. Like
no, she was around. She just missed it. And but she was there shortly thereafter to check everything out and sew me up, because I ripped. I mean, I had a pretty significant tear. And also, ladies, coconut oil, olive oil, whatever you got, lubricate that area. Lubricate your vagina and your peritoneum and all of. Is that right? Is that peritoneum
or like
perianum? Whatever the place between your anus and your vagina. Just make sure to lubricate so you don't tear. Like it's worth it. It's weird. Just do it. Yeah, prior so you don't tear. Like do your Kegels, man. Because I had a pretty significant. I mean, it wasn't like stem to stern, but I had a pretty significant tear. And and she was there. She was there when the placenta came, and she told me I had a beautiful placenta.
Your doctor was there.
My doctor was there for the placental delivery, and she's like, "Your placenta is beautiful," and it looks like. I mean, I don't know if anybody's ever seen one. We should probably throw a couple pictures up of it. Yeah. It looks like a tree of life when you really look at the placenta. But it looks like a tree, right? Because the umbilical cord comes in, and then all of the blood vessels and all the stuff come out. It's beautiful. I mean, not that I would want to eat it or bury it in my backyard or anything. They could take it away and do what they need to do with it. She was born, and then I was pronounced cured from gestational diabetes right there. And then she's like, "You're fine. Don't even worry about it. You're cured. I'm calling you cured from gestational." She's literally one of the best.
Baby's out.
People.
You're healthy, or be healthy, healthy. Baby, and
healthy baby, healthy you, healthy placenta. But again, Audrey was born at 37 weeks and 1 day.
I was going to ask you, yeah. And then,
what
was it like?
Little.
She's out.
Yeah. So she's on my chest. She's little. Like for my eyes, she's little. She's 6 pounds, like 2 ounces, something like that. Sid gave her her first bath. That was pretty cool.
Oh, and did Sid cut the umbilical cord, or what else?
We delayed cord. We delayed cord clamping for a little while. So I don't know, but he might have.
Okay.
And super not like, and we had talked about storing cord blood or whatever, and I signed off on like donate it to whoever needs it, like and then again movie, like total movie delivery. I'm good. I'm not in any pain anymore. I mean, other than just hospital, like you just had a baby pain. So we get to recovery. We get into our room for our 2-day stay, which was really like an effing vacation for me. And and the lights are low, and she's next to me or on me at all times. Like, and we had in the birth plan, like either Sid or I are with the baby the entire time. And so when she got her vitamin K and the eye goop or whatever, he was with her when all of that was going on, and they were prepping me and moving me to the other room. And this kid, the nurses are expert swaddlers. That kid wanted nothing to do with anything in her body. Like punching out and just like, and
keep her warm. What'd you do? Keep
she
her
didn't care.
The light?
Yeah, no, she didn't care. She's like, I'm out, man. I'm here.
But spent a lot of time skin to skin. They had a little cot in the room if Sid wanted to sleep. And we decided, and this is just, again, just the way we are. I looked at him and he's like, so you want me to stay? And I'm like, no, go home, sleep in our bed, feed the dogs, feed yourself. Like, I'm good. We got this.
Wow. Yeah.
We got this. I said, I can call a nurse if I get in trouble. The nurses are here and we're 10 minutes away. It's not like it's an hour.
You know, that's a very unicorn experience.
I know. I know. And the next day, what I got, a baguette and a thing of brie. And I was like, yes.
And in your mind, you're like, he's going to come back and get me my stuff.
He's going to get go out. And so, and the other thing that happened is as soon as he left, I turned on the TV. And what was playing on the TV? J.J. Abrams' Star Trek.
Yes.
I
love it.
I was like, that's funny.
My God.
I was like, that's funny.
That's
funny.
Amazing. It was amazing moment.
It was a form of closure for me in a really odd and unusual way, right?
Well, in that moment, were you present to it?
Yeah.
Were you
absolutely? The first movie she was ever exposed to was the movie he took me to when I was having a miscarriage before I got pregnant with her. And it was, I mean, signs and, the universe telling me you're in the right place, doing the right thing, and,
JJ, if you're listening.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Thank you. And the funny thing is when we got pregnant the first time, when I had the miscarriage, Chris Pine and Sid were actually both working at the Geffen, so they spent some time together. So it was also that piece of it was like, all funny. It was all very connected. And for listeners, the Geffen is a theater on the UCLA campus where they do live stage performances, and Sid was a stage manager there for a show for a little while. And so I mean, and then we brought her home, and I know it's like I'm telling you, it's like in the movie.
Yeah. You share it with me in pieces, and we talk, and we chat, and we laugh. But to have it all full circle, the whole episode like this is amazing. Oh,
I don't know if I answered. Yeah, I think I answered most of the questions. And
it's perfect.
There's a picture. There's a picture of me. I think she's still. I think because we delayed cord clamping. I think she was still attached to the placenta, and just on my chest. Right. And she's just, I've got a smile, and she's like still got all that white stuff on her. It's before the bath. And and I'm just, I don't know, full of endorphins and oxytocin and all the things that happen after you give birth,
And we'll put that in Delivery Diaries Instagram, a post about the cord. Oh my God.
Delayed
cutting the umbilical, delayed cord clamping. Because sometimes it happens right away. And sometimes you have a choice. But you have to know about it.
You have to know about it. Yeah. And
nutrients to keep with the baby and all that. So,
and for me, it was that blood belongs to her. She should have it. That's kind of like where my brain was about it. Right. And, from day one, she was the tiny human. And, because she came so fast, her head was round. It wasn't really pointy. And, her first parent visitor at our house was a friend of ours, and he came and he saw her, and he's like, her eyelashes stick straight out of her eyes, and they were super long, and it was just So, and she was a beautiful baby. She was a beautiful, and we knew she was going to be a redhead. She came out with red curly hair, and
oh my gosh, in that moment, wow,
in that moment, she was 10 fingers, 10 toes, fingernails, whole 9 yards, like nothing wrong with her.
You left after 2 days at the hospital?
It was like 1.5 days. I feel like it was like 36 or 40 hours. Coming home, I mean, I think there was one point, if I didn't say it out loud, I thought it. I'm like, who has the sense to let me take this tiny individual home? Like, this is dumb. Like, why would you do this? I don't know shit. I don't know what I'm doing.
All you know is
we were very fortunate. My colostrum came in right away. I would think it was maybe 4 or 5 hours. after she was born. And
That's
I never,
great.
ever had any problems breastfeeding that child.
Yeah. Colostrum is the first set of like breast milk. That's like, they call it, what do you call liquid gold?
Liquid gold. It is full of nutrients, and it will sustain an infant for several days until mother's milk comes in.
It's more yellow. Oh, it's yellow. Yeah. So it's
almost, it's yellow, and it doesn't look like milk at all.
You had a very healthy supply in the beginning,
very,
in the get-go.
Yeah, and very textbook in a lot of ways. There were no complications. There was nothing. I was very fortunate every step of the way. Sid says, it's my genetics. I was built to make babies, and I think that's probably true.
Yeah, I believe it and see it and know it and experienced it.
And
you're home, and what was it like to come home with a human?
It was cool. So
baby girl.
So I came in first and greeted the dogs. So Sid had a whole plan, and we followed Sid's plan because it was a good one of how to deal with the dogs. Because we had 2 family dogs. Sadie had been with us for years at that point, and Jones had been with us for a little less than a year. And they were bonded. They were a bonded pair of dogs in their own weird way. And they were bonded to me, and had, Sadie, the older dog, my dog, had changed her attitude a little bit while I was pregnant. She had never been aggressive towards other dogs. Pretty much as soon as I was pregnant, that changed. We would go for a walk, and she wouldn't let any other dogs near me.
Wow.
And she got not aggressive, but definitely defensive. And that worried me, because I thought, well, what's she going to do with this baby? And so I came in first. I greeted the dogs, and then Sid brought the baby in and laid her down on the floor and let them lick her, which sounds like to people who are like germophobic, or to people who are like, what are you going to do? Like, it sounds like cuckoo bananas thing to do, but it's the way
sniffer, but to lick her. Yeah.
Right. But it's the way she got accepted into the pack of our family. And then from that point, you train the dogs that the baby is more important than them. They are subservient to the baby. And it's, it's a process, but you also don't ignore or abandon your dogs. They still need love. They still need attention. They still need all their things,
What's
and
the
so
word I'm looking at? When you said pack, you said she's invited to the pack, and it's just so, not indigenous is the word. It's so, like like animalistic human nature. I don't know the word, but yeah, it's I love that.
There's instinctual, maybe, is the word you might be looking for.
Yeah, something like that. That's why I bring it up, because to have that apart now, because when you said pack, it just went to my like instinctual core of like and there would be a word for it, but you understand.
And like, look, they're just part of our family.
I was gonna say, how are you feeling as now the mama?
Overwhelmed, terrified, excited. Oh, and the day, so Sid makes this fried rice that is amazing.
Oh my God, I gotta try it now.
It has a lot of garlic in it.
Yes.
And so that's the first meal I had. It was chicken fried rice when we came home. It was beef stir fry. I thought it was fried rice. He says it was beef stir fry.
I love that. I hope we can get that.
So it was beef, not chicken. So it was beef so it was beef and broccoli and rice, lots of garlic.
Just so good for you postpartum.
So
beef
good,
and broth.
right?
Oh my God.
But not thinking this child has never had garlic in her life. So I ate a half a wheel of brie and a baguette, and then I come home same day, because that was breakfast, and so the evening meal was this, heavy duty garlicky rice.
You never ate the garlic when during your pregnancy?
I did.
Not as much as
wait here.
Okay, wait, you're going somewhere with it. Okay.
I'm going somewhere.
Okay.
So then I'm breastfeeding, and we're eating, and I'm breastfeeding, and then I don't know what time it was. It was late. I was tired. We were all tired. She starts screaming and screaming. It's the first night she's home from the hospital. I'm like, oh my God.
The first
I broke the baby. What is happening? And so Sid lays her down. He's so smart. Such a smart daddy. Knew. Don't know how he knew, but he knew there was gas.
Yes.
Right? Like her little digestive tract had just really started working, right?
Yeah.
And so he pumps her legs. She lets out a big fart and sleep.
I love it.
So like, but it was tough. It was a tough night,
God.
you know.
Yes, your first night she's screaming. It's not like a irritated gas.
No,
it's like,
she was in pain. She was in pain like that. Like, and I, you know, so, and then all of the things that you don't learn, right? Like, oh, when your baby cries, your boobs are going to leak.
Right? I know. Isn't that insane? Like, you just, I got to be in another room just to like not have it.
As soon as she cried, boobs leak. Like, I hear her crying over the phone. I'm at work. I hear her crying over the phone, boobs leaking. Because I went back to work. And again, this is an indictment of our society. But I went back at 10.5 weeks just for financial reasons. And we knew he was staying home. And so I'd been pumping and feeding. And so there's plenty of breast milk in the freezer waiting for the day that I went back to work. And you know, but I'd be on the phone with him at work. She'd be crying. Gotta go pump. Sorry. You know. And
with your amazing boss and amazing environment at work.
Yeah, it was, you know, it was okay. And I mean, there were some tricky aspects to it because so while I was on maternity leave, this is so tangential to becoming a parent, but it was kind of an important part of my journey. I left as basically the assistant to the general manager and president of a couple of film and television studios, rental space studios. I came back to the president of a publicly traded real estate investment trust because while I was on maternity leave, the company had gone public. And so when I came back to the job, it wasn't the job that I had left. And it was not a job I was interested in doing. And so that's when I got transferred over to operations and changed my life. And it was amazing and a wonderful experience being the operations manager at the studio. And really fortunate that they had the faith and trust in me to do that. But yeah, it was the first few months back were tough on multiple levels. I was doing a job I didn't want to do. I was doing a job I didn't want to be involved with really. And I was dealing with the fact that I was a failure as a mom, right? Like I couldn't be the one who was home, you know, and it was just heartbreaking and I was mourning the loss of what I had wanted as a mom, but you know, practical things come up.
Okay. Yeah. So happy, healthy dogs.
Dogs pack home, almost killed her with garlic. Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
so, and you know, and maternity leave was kind of a blur, honestly, because
say that again.
Maternity leave is like my memory of maternity leave is like, it just was one long day. Like people were in and out. My mom came, his mom came. You know, it was their friends and stuff came in and left. The doula came a few times. That was amazing. Just having her there and talking about the whole experience for her. She said to me, she's a wonderful human. We still owed her some money. And I, you know, I went to go pay her and she's like, no, you taught me more about birth in that, 2 hours than I have learned in any other situation. So it was amazing.
Wow.
And you know, and just, it was lovely, lovely sentiment. And, you know, and then we became parents. And that's sort of the crazy thing about this whole process to family, this whole journey to family, right? Like, I mean, in some ways we were a family before because it was him and me and the dogs. And we have a very, very close-knit group of friends, right? And, you know, people were always in and out of our house. I think we had at least one person living with us for a while at that point. And just, you know, it was, and then it became us, you know, like our family. And it was, you know, there were tough things about it. And I'm not going to talk out of turn. I'm not going to try to tell Sid's story here, but having him home and with as progressive as we are, and, you know, as humans, and we're pretty progressive family. I tend to be a little closer to center politically than Sid is. And but even with that, it's like the what is, you know, the upending of what is the traditional family, right? Like mom stays home, dad goes to work, blah, blah, blah. Just reversing that to some degree. I guess reverse is the wrong word. It was a trial. The first few years of him being home with her were a trial for us. Because I was resentful because I wasn't me, and, you know, and like just all the stuff that you just deal with. But all in all, I mean, Our kid is awesome. You know, we love each other deeply. You know, the one thing that did happen, and I will talk about this a little bit, is that Audrey had some pretty severe ear infections between 18 and 24 months. And that resulted in her losing some language. And so we ended up having all of the autism tests, and she's not autistic, and a couple of speech therapists. And the ultimate decision was to get her into daycare a couple days a week so that she could be socialized. Because really, she'd been with Sid. And, you know, for the most part. And you know, and they even to this day have a nonverbal communication that is really special and really just, in my experience, unique to the two of them. Although who knows, there's probably other dads out there that have something similar, but it's not something that's common. And
well, it's not common that it's a stay-at-home dad.
Right. It's becoming more so. And I like that. Like, we even watched this silly movie with Kevin Hart last night. That was like he stay-at-home dad.
Yeah, I want to watch that.
And just,
can I go back to that? Just not to lose your train of thought. Is because that's where we dropped off. Was you did have this thought that you would be home.
That was the plan.
Okay.
That was originally like when Sid and I got together. That was the plan, that we were going to be a super traditional family. I just didn't work out that way. And
bringing it back to eHarmony.
Oh yeah,
like when you met. Yeah, all that. Yeah. Okay,
you know, and again, you know, there's some things about I don't know that knowing now what I know about eHarmony that I would have chosen that again. But I was there for.
Well, I mean, how you met.
Yeah, right. But
the plans you guys created as older.
Ultimately, it worked out for me, right?
To be parents.
And so we'll always be grateful. I have a visor that says eHarmony on it because that's the gift we got for getting married or whatever. I don't know. It's weird.
Well, as an older soon to be parents, like that's what you created. Like, and I say that because I created, like Brian and I also created that one of us would be stay at home, me, because we could. Right. And then before I knew it, this is so different.
It's different.
Like it is. Yeah. This is what I signed up for, but okay.
Yeah. And it is different. It is different than what you think it's going to be. And, but yeah, no, it was, you know, being a parent, and now 12 years later, here we are. And it's almost exactly almost 13 years from the day we found out we were pregnant. I was pregnant. Right. Like we're really close to like that 13-year mark.
Yeah.
And, so it's been a crazy ride. And it's been beautiful and wonderful and very educational, and a lot of evolution in both of our in all three of our personalities. I mean, evolution in Audrey's personality, just because she's grown up.
What's Audrey like?
She is her own self. And what I mean by that is she is authentically who she is. She's genuine. She's kind for the most part. I mean, she's 12. Not all 12-year-olds are always kind because, you know, hormones and whatever. But she's a dancer, which is something that has really been a part of her life since she was tiny, but not in the way that it is now. Vibrant and sweet. An adult. The crazy thing about my kid is that adults really enjoy her. People her own age sometimes don't get her. She's just interested in being a friend, and she's very empathetic. She would cry when I remember this, like when, you know, if another kid would get in trouble, she would cry because she was feeling bad for that kid.
She feels it.
Right. But at the same time, like, she's also fierce. She's a delight. Like, I absolutely love being her mom. You know, and we're in that child to young adult transition, which can be really, really, really challenging.
Yeah. I was going to ask how you are as a mom,
you know, I tell people, I don't parent. I don't really parent. And, you know, that's like part of like the mythos, right? Like the things I tell myself, the story I tell myself, which is the Brene Brown saying. The story I tell myself is that I don't really parent. Of course I parent, but for the most part, she doesn't need a lot because she's pretty self-sufficient. Yeah.
So a couple of things. A couple of things as we wrap up though. I mean, because I know we could go on about your baby girl. I know. Which is this last juicy part. So a couple of things. When is Sid going to come out with his book, his daddy book, or how to be there?
Oh my God, I wish. I don't. You know, don't know, but he should.
Or he'll hear this episode. Yeah.
He'll hear it in the episode. He totally should. Okay. He totally should write a book about being a birth partner and a stay-at-home dad. He would make so much money if he wrote even just like an ebook, right? Like, yeah, totally.
Yeah. And so two last things is I love you.
I love you too.
Thank you for sharing your delivery diary, and I adore you. I respect you. I appreciate you. I'm so happy to be on this journey with you.
I'm really grateful that I get to share the story, and really, I understand that my experience was ideal, and that there's a level of guilt that comes with that sometimes, right? And that's something we can deal with later. But like, no NICU, no, none of the things that happen to millions of women. My birth experience was almost exactly what I wanted, almost, because nothing's perfect. And it was beautiful and it was amazing. And I do this work because no matter what the story, whether you breastfeed or don't breastfeed, whether you had a C-section or you did vaginal, if you did VBAC, whatever it was, the goal is to make it as close to what you want or what we want or what you and your partner want as possible. And that comes through education. And I really do believe that the fact that Sid and I are self-educators was instrumental in my ability to have as good of a birth experience as I did. Because I do think even if I had had a C-section, it would have been traumatic for me. But at the end of the day, I was prepared that it might happen.
Wow, that's so key. You were prepared.
Yeah, prepared. Being prepared for all of the possibilities.
Yes,
of what this looks like.
Can we make that our tagline? Being prepared for all the possibilities.
Yeah,
because we don't know
for sure.
We're here not to know everything, but we're here to at least. That's why we're giving this information out in so many different platforms and ways. And so my hope for you, Flo, is that you utilize this platform to have that, because I heard it, the guilt, and because I had great pregnancies, and yet that's my experience, that's my journey, and to know that this is your journey and this is your experience, because there are women that are listening that probably would have that guilt because something else was supposed to happen or something bad was supposed to happen, but that's not the case. And every birth is valid, every experience is valid.
And yeah, exactly. Every experience is valid. And I'm grateful for the way that I was able to bring all that to the world.
Yeah. And you own it, girl. Yes, mama. Thank you. And with that, anything else?
Just that, this is such a beautiful experience.
Yeah.
Being able to just do this with you.
Thank you. And we're here, and I could have said it in the beginning, but I'll close out with, it's important that obviously Flo and I do share our own delivery diary, of course, because we get the privilege and honor to hear others. And, eventually, obviously, I'll share mine. And I'm so grateful that you shared yours, Flo.
Thanks. All right. I'll see you later.
Okay.